Al-Mualim says the government forces will, quote, go all the way in Idlib. The province is home to some 3 million people, among them an estimated 10,000 fighters from Al-Qaeda and the Nusra Front, who were transferred from other areas taken over by the government. It is those fighters that both Syria and Russia and Syria want wiped out.
The decision of the Syrian leadership is to fight al-Nusra Front, whatever the sacrifices are. We are ready to exert every possible effort not to harm civilians.
It
was with satisfaction that we noted the majority of the Syrian Arab Republic is now freed of terrorists. What we need now is to wipe out those terrorist groups which persist, particularly in the de-escalation zone in Idlib.
And joining me now is Al Jazeera's senior political analyst, Marwan Bishara. Marwan, good to have you on set. So we heard there from the UN asking for the violence not to escalate. There are millions of people there. We've also heard from Turkey asking for some consideration for the refugee situation. Do you think Russia is likely to listen to either of those?
No. I mean, they will listen, but I'm not sure they will hear exactly the pleas from various capitals, including Ankara, Riyadh, and other places, Washington, and so on and so forth. Because you see, from the very beginning, the Russians have been quite consistent. Since September 2015, when they intervened militarily in Syria, they've said different things and they've heard different things, and they seem to be meaning different things, but they were very consistent that military comes first. Political comes second, humanitarian comes third. They were also very clear that there is no war in Syria. You know, Russia is probably one of the only countries in the world that refuses to take refugees from Syria because there is no war in Syria, according to the Russians. There's only counter-terror operations. So the Russians have been consistent, unlike all others, unlike the Turks and the Iranians and the Israelis and everyone else. They have been quite consistent, and I think they're going to see, or they're going to follow through on their threat to intervene, to launch their offensive against Idlib, and there's going to be a very high human cost. And
given that, the Russians, though, have asked the international community to help with Syria once they have completed this offensive. Why is that? What are they looking for now? Look, at the end of the day, Syria is really paralyzed. Syria is on its knees. It's going to be very difficult for the Russians and the Syrian regime, once they win the war militarily, for them to carry any serious reconstruction of the country, because that's going to be expensive. And they understand that for Syria to move forward, especially if Assad, as Russia insists, must stay, it's going to be impossible for them to move forward without Western or international assistance, without Western or international investment, without Western or international support. So while Russia can win militarily on the ground, while they can repeat, for example, what the Americans did in Mosul, defeat ISIL at a huge human cost. But unlike in Mosul, where the Iraqis is a rich oil country supported by the United States, in the case of Syria, it's been in a civil war for several years. Several hundreds of thousands of people died, millions of refugees, half of the country is displaced, and most of it is destroyed. That requires help. So is this the last, they're calling it the last rebel stronghold. Is the civil war over once Russia and Syria take over Idlib? Is this going to be back a country that goes back to Bashar al-Assad governing it? You know, I think the old wisdom is you can't step in the same river twice, because it's just the nature of things. It's just impossible. It's wishful thinking for anyone to think we're going to go back to the pre-2011. First of all, because nature changes, things change, and seriously, Syria has changed. And not only because you can't step in that one river twice, it's because after the rivers of blood in Syria, Bashar al-Assad is not going to be governing like he governed or ruling like he ruled before 2011. The country is divided. As I said earlier, the country is destroyed. It's on its knees. The hatreds today run deep.
There is no room for reconciliations because the Assad regime only wants to win, not to reconcile. Because the whole understanding from 2012 that there needs to be a transitional body with executive powers is now completely sidelined in favor of Russia supporting Assad in order to defeat everything, including the moderate opposition, the liberal opposition, the democratic opposition, in addition to the extremist jihadis and so on and so forth. And I think that will lead to more of the same tragedies. I think the country will remain divided. I don't see a political future for Assad, even though Moscow insists on it.
Marwan Bishara, thank you so much. It's always good to get your take on this. Thank you.